The more you know. Brought to you by Flagstaff, Rockwood, building better RVs, making smarter RVers.
I want to ask you about roofs. And roof leaks are, I think, one of the biggest enemies to RVs and people that don't maintain the roof. I ask people all the time, we up at the campground, how often do you check your roof? Oh, we check it all the time, have no problems. Well, when was the last time you checked it? And they go, and they don't even know. And if you wait until the problem manifests itself, it's a little bit too late. What are your thoughts about RV roofs? Let's talk about that for a minute.
That is probably like my number one sticking point with customers. I get asked all the time, what are the most important maintenance things to do? What's the most important thing I can do? And it's always, to me, is proper tire pressure. Make sure your tires and tire pressure and brakes are good, because that's just pure safety when you're towing with your family. And B, check the seals on your roof. To me, that is the most easily preventable problem. And when you have a problem there, it's a big problem, because what happens is those seals up there, especially depending on where you're at in the country, some places the sun just beats those seals up. They expand and contract, and they're meant to do that. But if you get a void, or if they get brittle because they've been baked for so long, they crack. And then if you get a massive rainstorm, then you're going to start getting that drip that comes into your roof. And when you have water intrusion there, if you can catch it early, it's not that big of a deal. It's just like your house. But if it goes on for a long enough time, you're going to have bigger problems, and it's going to get expensive in order to repair that, when really all it took was, 4 or 5 times a year, get up there and check your seals. It's imperative.
Okay, you say 4 or 5 times a year, and that's a lot, but I think at least 3 times a year. I mean,
yes.
At least, depending upon where you live. But by the time a problem manifests itself and you see it, isn't that quite often it's too late? We need to look for little tiny areas around every opening, every vent, every hole that's been punched through that roof is a potential leak. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it very well could be, and oftentimes, I mean, you can find one and realize you just got lucky. There was nothing happened. In 3 times a year for sure. I personally don't think it's excessive to check it 4 or 5 times. When you think about the risk reward of what you're doing there, of getting up there and just checking it, especially if you live in like in the South down here, where you get extreme temperature swings, a lot of sun, Colorado, the Mountain West, where you have that sun is really powerful. I just think it's a really simple but important thing to do that takes 5 minutes. Just climb up, check it, and you can save yourself months of headaches by doing that.
And thousands of dollars. Oh,
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And a bad experience, right? Like, then it's often, if something like that happens, people like to blame the trailer or whatever they own, I bought a bad product, when really it's like saying, well, my engine blew up in my F-150, but I never changed the oil.
Yeah.
60,000 miles and I never changed the oil. Those damn Fords, Yeah, I mean, it's like, come on, there's a certain level of maintenance.
Talk to me about the roofs on RVs, because, sometimes I hear people saying that, they use crappy material. Some roofs, many times you can't walk on an RV's roof. I know that the Flagstaffs you can, Rockwoods you can. You can walk across the whole thing. But talk to me about what they're made of, the material and the limitations of those roofs. I see people up there at a NASCAR race with a lawn chair sitting on top of their RV. I'm thinking, oh my God.
I know. I have the same feeling when I see that too. And there are multiple different kinds of roof materials out there, as well as roof construction. You're going to have to ask the questions whenever you're buying that product that you're buying. Is it a walkable roof? And what that means is just that they used a thick enough or strong enough decking or roof material that you can walk across it to get up there and check. If it's not, then you're going to have to do, take up a piece of carpet and flip the soft side down and bring up some plywood or something to lay on there. And then you're shimmying it across so you can check your seals. It's a terrible experience for a customer to try and do that.
But isn't that I'm not trying to unsell anybody, but if I have an RV, I buy it, and they say, oh, by the way, and they won't say this, don't walk on the roof. But if the roof is not fully walkable, that says something, at least I think it says something about the construction or the lack of construction quality put into that RV.
Absolutely. Especially when regular maintenance stated in the owner's manuals is to get up there and check your seals 3 to 4 times a year, yet they're not giving you the opportunity to safely walk across your roof. So 100%. And there's, brands out there that'll do it to try to cut cost, but there's some that do it to cut weight, to try and build as light as possible. I think it's important purely, even just from a customer safety standpoint, to get up there and check their stuff without worrying about falling through their roof. What I tell most customers is, look, bottom line, 90% of all these roofs out here are all relatively close to the same. They're all going to have 12 to 18-year warranty on them. Yes, some may have better features than others, but I say it's not going to be something that you as a customer is going to notice a difference between all of them. Could I tell you why ours, in my opinion, is better? Yes. Is it going to change my customer's day-to-day life with that? No, it's really not. Like, yeah, I could make the argument, yes, it will, because it's better and they won't have any of these issues, but for the most part, they're all going to be the same. You've got some people out there that'll still tell you, well, you got to make sure you don't have to get up there and treat those roofs. Years past, you have to come up and get this special sealing material where you'd have to roll it off with like a paint roller all over the place and clean the roof in a particular way. And that's hard to find anymore. I mean, it's, for the most part, they're all pretty good, the roofing material. It all comes back to the application and who's installing it and how they're installing it is really the more important thing. If they're cutting that rubber roof material too short to the front, and then it's got a little gap where that cap comes up, and then it's got a little space, right? Like, you're going, I mean, I'm sure you've seen it where you're driving down the road and you look over, and that fifth wheel looks like it's got a parachute up the top because the air's getting in the front. Or they cut the hole for a vent. They slice it a little too far this way, and they try to cover it up with some extra sealant. It's things like that. It's the installation that is a little bit more important, I think, than most of the actual materials that are used out there, because most of the materials are pretty good.